Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dottie. If you're new here, thank you so much for coming on here. And if you're not, welcome back. Welcome to a new series called Things I Wish I Knew About Marriage. And essentially, I'm bringing together some of my amazing aunties to come and talk about their experiences, their journey to marriage, things they wish they knew beforehand, things they wish people told them about marriage, their expectations versus reality. So yes, stay tuned, make sure you like, share, comment, and yes, I hope you enjoy it. Hi guys, my name's Dottie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for coming on here. Today I have two very special guests. I have two very dear aunties to me that I'd like to introduce themselves today. So when you're ready, auntie.
My name is Dolapo Bolumole. I've been married for 10 years. I'm a mom of 2 and I'm a property investor.
So my name is Adeola Bello. I'm a social worker. I manage a service. I'm a social work manager for a service in Haringey. I've been married for 22 years and I have 3 children.
I would describe my marriage in 3 words, saying loving, caring, and dependable.
In 3 words, the first thing is blessed. My marriage is blessed. It's blessed. The other word I'll use is my home. My marriage is fun. There is laughter every single day. We call my husband the clown of the house. And the third thing I'll say is loving. My marriage is characterized by love.
I would say the one quality I really appreciate about my husband is that he's consistent. So from the point where I met him until now, whatever he says he's going to do, he does, and he's always consistent.
My husband is caring. He's the most caring man I have ever seen. The thing is, even when I pretend to have a headache, he is sincerely caring for me. So he is caring, and I think that's one quality that is known with him by everyone.
See, I want to ask a question off the back of that because God has been a very central theme to sustaining marriage. How do people get to a point where they've let God choose their husband? Because there's so many examples of marriages that have started because they believed that God had led them into that marriage and the marriage didn't continue. So it's a difficult question, but what would you say to people to, I guess, ensure that this is a God-led marriage?
The circumstances behind a relationship, how the relationship started, what did you do? And before I go there, what in your life do you let God lead you? Everything or some things? Who do you speak to? Who advises you? How respected are you from that man? So you just need to look at everything because yes, people have gone and said, God said, and God did not say. But it depends on your relationship with God, how you hear from God, to be honest, and do you commit everything about your life, not certain things? Are you really fully hearing about everything? Like you want to travel, do you buy the ticket before you pray about it? So for me, it's an holistic thing. God does not make a mistake, I promise you. And you would know how you hear from God. I don't know how you hear from God. You know the signs, you know examples you can fall back to that things have happened and you know. So that's all I can say. Just that some people are is in relationship, or I want a job, or I want to buy a house. Certain things that you remember to call God, or you choose to hear, or you choose to listen to certain people. There is consistency, consistent people, consistent voice that should be in your life. And those things cannot mislead you. There is a spiritualness to it, but there is also the physicalness. Because if you're drawn to something, you will see so many faults, but somehow your body and your system is in that thing. I think that's the only way I can explain it with my example. And today, this is where I am.
It's so funny she says that because I come from the extreme opposite, which is because I grew up like from 12 years old in church, like bringing home anyone who wasn't a spiritual like pastor was almost like, you know, And I think that also, from almost the opposite end, also almost tripped me up, because I then had this huge expectation as to, oh, he has to be able to quote scriptures all this way. He has to be this type of person before he can be worthy of being a husband. Not to say that I didn't like guys that were not. Of course, we're all growing up. We're saying university, as you came out of university, I had all these expectations. I met all sorts of people that challenged my faith as well around, oh, wow, I really like this guy, but he's not a Christian. Having to deal with that, having to make the difficult decision sometimes to just, man, this is not going to go anywhere. I know it. You know it. What's the point? But I will say, I was talking about the journey. I read something recently, like I just saw in one of my old journals. I didn't journal much, but I did. And I saw how depressed, because I told you I wanted to get married when I was 18. This is now about 35 or so. This is a long time. And I was feeling very dejected. I remember feeling like, God, you've just disappointed me completely in this area of my life, because I've served you my whole life. I've always wanted to be married to this person. Am I not good enough as a person? And in that case, the only reason why I'm here is because my parents love me. If my parents didn't love me, I would have done something about this, because I don't need to be going through this pain all the time. And I read that and I was like, wow, I descended to such despair over this whole getting married thing. But then from then, God then through the Holy Spirit said, look, just cut off guys. Like I went on a fast. I was telling somebody recently, because I said, you're too confused. There are too many women around you. You need to go on a fast. So I went on a fast where I was not talking to guys. It's literally just me and God. And over 30 days, God started these things. In the end, it became something called Purposefully Single. And in those years, like day one, it was a prayer about yourself. And this, if you see the words that came out. One time, my dad's quite spiritual. He read it. He was like, who wrote this? Because it wasn't you. Day two, the future of my husband. Day three, this. And I went through that journey. And by the end of that journey, my whole mind refrained from being this desperate person that wanted to be married by all costs and depressed about it, to being someone who was faithful that God had the right person and had spoken into my future. I'd spoken about my children. I'd spoken about my marriage. I'd spoken about the type of man, a man of character, a woman of this. There were so many great words that came out of it. And that journey, honestly, by the end of it, I just felt, you know what? If this is what my whole singleness was about, I'm grateful that this is what it's produced, So yeah, so that was the journey. By the end of that journey, I kind of started to go on the path. Then I started speaking to my husband. But remember, I told you I knew him. Speaking to him, that's when my eyes were open to the type of person he was. It was still like a bit of a challenge, because I was like, there's still some things that I'm not clear on. But by then, I really understood what God had for me, And now, how many years ago with celebration at 10 p.m., and I was telling him because he brought me. And I was like, it's amazing how we've evolved together and we like love each other. And, it's not just even about the love, it's the whole package. It's a full package. Thing. So the decision, and that scripture that says, what you started in the spirit, why have you allowed the flesh to take over? Exactly. I believe that's what happens when some people say they hear God, but eventually it doesn't work out. It's not that God didn't mean well, it's that somehow their flesh took over the whole thing and just messed up everything that God had, just like Adam and Eve.
Yeah. I was just thinking that actually, until they ate the apple, so there is a time of apple eating in marriage, and immediately you eat the apple, your eyes will open, and certain things
can never go back.
Wow, that is so good. Okay, lovely. So, what were some of the things that you wish that you were better prepared for in marriage?
I think marriage. Marriage. I wish I was better prepared for marriage. That would be mine. Marriage is not just about falling in love with somebody and wanting to be called a missus. I wasn't ready for marriage, but I went into it thinking I was, because I thought I knew. I've seen my mom's marriage. That's all marriage is to, that was it. So there's so many things I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't expecting, that I wish I knew. I really wish I knew. I wish I understood the things around finances, the things around love, the things around being emotional, the intimate side of marriage, when it comes to sleeping with each other or not sleeping with each other, what I want, what you want, the side of sex as well, what I want, what he wants, what I enjoy, what does he enjoy, how long. There's so many things I wasn't prepared for because I had no teacher. That's me. But this generation has teachers, a lot. What they need is the discerning to listen and follow the right teacher. That's the key difference for me.
Thank you. And let me pick up on that. That's true, because there's a lot more information now, but I almost feel like there's this information overload now, where now you're now not, and it's almost like you have to define your way. And that's what I teach the kids, is that no longer anything about, oh, this doesn't exist or that. No, everything exists. We are in an information world, but this is our way and this is what we believe. And that's the only way I can teach them with this amount of information, how to just sieve out everything else and focus. But I think for me, one of the things that I think in terms of things that I didn't quite prepare for, because of course, like I said, I got married a bit later, so I was a bit prepared. But like she said, you can never be prepared fully for marriage. That one, you're just going to have to find out when you start getting into. But there's some fundamentals, like I said. If you've done marriage counseling, then it'll give you some indication of some of the things to be aware of. And that was helpful. I will say that two things that I have struggled a bit with have been children and in-laws. Now, and I'm upfront about it. But then I think with in-laws that I brought up, which is, you know, we come from different backgrounds, right? And one thing that was very sound that they told us in our marriage counseling is that if there's any difficulty you have with any in-law, let the owner of the parents be the one to go, and you have the conversation together, but the person who goes to the in-law is the person who actually owns those parents, right? So my parents, for instance, if my husband has any issue with something my parents have done, then he will tell me, we'll have a conversation about it, come together as a unit. Then I will go and address them and say, Mom, Dad, this is the situation. This wasn't well received. And in the best way, as I know my parents will take it. What is not useful a lot of times is where I'll go to my husband's mom and say, excuse me, this is not how, no. It's better and it's more wise to get my husband to face off to his mom or his dad to say, this is how we want to do things in our home, right? So I thought that was very wise to go in with marriage. That being said, there's still many things. You're always going to be living, you know, like in our home, we have a very open door policy. Not everybody has it, but we have a very open door policy. And so we have people living with us. We have families on my side, on his side, and just dealing with all of that as well. I wasn't necessarily fully prepared for, because you see, you're dealing with different personalities. And so as you as a person have to a lot of times either decide, I'm going to be a troublemaker or I'm going to be a peacemaker. And that's going to be your stance with respect, right, to that. So it's about you navigating that also very wisely so that you have, because ultimately, right, you want your husband, you know, and your home to be happy. And if you're not getting on with the in-laws or you're not getting things resolved in a positive way, then ultimately it's going to be a point of pain for your partner. So just being aware of that, not just throwing the baby with the bathwater, like, look, everybody's crazy in your house. Okay, you know.
It's easier to do that, but
it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't. And then the children have to grow up without their cousins.
True.
Like, it's
That's
so unnecessary.
correct.
So
That's really good. So what would be your advice to people that have just entered marriage? Because I know this is all the things I wish I knew before marriage, but there will be some people that have just entered marriage or are well in marriage. What would be your advice for them?
Wow. Okay. What would I say to newlyweds, if I can put it that way?
Yeah.
The first thing I would say is enjoy your marriage. Marriage, there are times and there are seasons. There is morning, afternoon, and then continuous. I'm careful to say evening, but I'll just say continuous enjoyment in marriage. And you need to identify what your season is and what season you are in marriage. One of the things I appreciate Dolapo for is the age at which she got married. A lot of us, and I think, you know, I applaud you. Honestly, I do. I applaud you because during our time at that age, we have eyes, we have voices, we have aunties. Some of them mean well, but just don't know how to say what they mean well.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly plug. We have a series called Dear Auntie where we actually tackle these
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
2 episodes out where we have discussion with some aunties based on the pressures to marry young. Some of the comments that aunties make on
honestly.
Watch that, guys, if you haven't watched that already.
So watch that. I think we need to watch that.
Yes, you need to watch that, please. Thanks so much.
But what can I say to enjoy your marriage? It's the beginning. Enjoy it. Dolapo said one thing and I hold it. There's some things you should not allow grow. From the day one, just, you know,
nip it in the bud.
Yeah. I think that's the first thing I'm going to say to you. I'm very big on finances. And there is a lot of talk on joint account, individual account, you know.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, there is a lot of talk about that. This is what I say. There is a time of courtship before marriage. And I would like everyone in courtship to discuss everything. Courtship is not about us sleeping together or having sex or just going out for dates. It's about us unveiling ourselves to ourselves, which means you talk about everything. If you want to even say it's about having sex, okay, talk about what you like about sex, how you like it. So coming back to finances, talk about it. Be observant during courtship so that when you get married, you'll be in a better place to decide how your finances and who should, you know, what it should look like. If not, that's a time bomb waiting to explode. Please, finances for me is really key. It's so important because it can break everything good that you have, you know, built. So when you're new in wedding, you're in your early seasons, enjoy it. Spend time together. Go out, do the things, fly, travel, please. Because when children come,
it's a different type of travel.
It's a different ball game completely. Find out where your strengths are. Who is the stronger vessel in certain things? And then make sure you meet to get yourself together and your weaknesses. This early time, this is when you do that. Yeah. And then also, both of you have my husband and I, we have our, what's the word I'm looking for? In our marriage, I would say do's and don'ts. We have them. And you have to have one voice. That those are the things you do together. You know, understanding. You just have them because it's different. The culture in my home is different from the culture in my sister's home, even though we're from the same womb. Yours is different. Yeah. And most importantly, serve God together. Together. I'm not asking both of you to quote 50 million Bible verses or go out and preach. I'm saying together, serve God. Have a culture. I have a cousin who lived with me when 20-something years ago. So she lived with me for about 3 years. And she came visiting last year. And we jumped into the car and I said, oh, let's pray. And she was like, Auntie Adeola, so you still pray before you drive. Wow. So have certain things that is known when it comes to the things of God together. Build your family together. And the Lord will help you.
Man.
Very beautiful. So first of all, as is a passion for me, I want to talk to single women first. So, and then I'll come to once you get married. So single women, please, during the period when you're waiting, use that to discover yourself, discover your passions, discover what you're strong at, discover what you want to build in the future. I'll tell you that one of the things that has really helped me in marriage is the fact that I already built a business before I got married. So that business I was able to sustain through. Even when I was having kids, by this point, I'd already been working this business for about 5 years. So by the time the kids were coming, it was not a new business. It's not that when I was trying to carry a baby, then I'm trying to create a business. Do you understand? It doesn't work. In fact, I had to reduce my business to focus on the kids during that season. So the single period before you meet your husband is actually when you need to be finding out what your passions are, finding out those things, because you won't have time for that when you get married. That's not the time to be discovering yourself. It then becomes a lot about your children. And that becomes your passion. What are your children's passions? What are your children's goals? That's what dominates the first few years. And actually, what am I talking about? For at least 18 years. Nobody's going to be thinking, some people can do that. But actually, the time when you're single, you want to be developing all those things so that you have something in a sense. It's almost like you have something to give to your husband when he comes to find you, not this pretty face only. As I'm not saying you don't have a job and all of that, but sometimes you find that even as a married woman that having a job is difficult when you have children, especially early years, because it's like, are you going you start to have this tug of war between you leaving the child, going back to work, or do you want to be there? You know, like some of these things. And for people who are career women, please, continue, but just know that you're building these things before you get married and before you have kids, if you're given that opportunity to do that. So travel as much as you can, get to know yourself, travel with friends, do as much of those things. Because once you get married, if you are lucky, you can get that 1 year to do that with your husband. But some people get knocked up in the first month. That's the end.
Welcome to my world.
Exactly. So, and that's the end of traveling for the next 2-3 years, right? So just think about your singleness wise and don't just wallow, because I spent a bit of time wallowing, waiting for the guy. But at some point, I then got the reset and then started to do things. So at least I was grateful by the time I got married and started having kids. And thank God I spent my life doing all these things, because if I hadn't done these things, Anyway, so that's on the one hand to single women. But then to married people, I'll say one thing, which you did touch on, which is really when you're dating, and at that point, that's when you need to put out all the things that are in your heart. So like discussing roles and responsibilities that you're going to have when you're married. Who's going to be paying the mortgage? Are you going to share it? Is the husband going to be doing it? Is the wife going to be doing it? Like, have those types of very, very detailed conversations. So you have a bit of a framework before you go into the marriage, because you don't want to be defining those things when you now feel like you're shackled. Do you understand? Not to say that, do you understand? Like, I'm not trying to say that marriage is necessarily shackled, but you don't want to feel like you were entrapped. Like, oh, I had this very future driven type of husband who was, progressive and doesn't feel like women should cook. And then you're now in marriage and it's like, where's my food? Do you understand? And this has happened to a couple I know, where they just thought they were this really yuppie couple. And then all of a sudden the husband was like, my dad didn't have 2 heads. Why is food not waiting for me when I come back from work? Wow. Right? These conversations could have been had before they got married, so that they have an expectation around, okay, these are the roles and responsibilities around who's going to be really dominant with the children, who's going to be focusing, who's going to be doing the spiritual, because you have to train up your children, not only physically, who's going to be taking them to the sports club, are you going to share those things? All those kind of nitty-gritty things are going to be happening in the marriage. Those conversations need to happen. And that's why I said, marriage counseling does give you some framework. Some good marriage counselors will give you some of those things to have those conversations about, house maintenance, who's buying food. All those types of conversations need to happen before you get married. So those are the practical tips on marriage. But I think from how both of you will relate, obviously what you both said, marriage, sometimes you can never be fully prepared, but take ownership for your own self and take ownership for your own feelings. That's what I will end on here, which is, somebody may be doing something that upsets you. Have the conversation, like you said, which is around, let them know, not set them up. Don't just fester and allow it. And, it's interesting about sex as well. Like, say the things you like and say the things you don't. Don't just kind of keep everything inside. I don't know if it's women or men that are guilty of doing that, but try to share as much as you can, but then there's such a thing as oversharing as well. You also have to be wise around not hurting the other person's feelings and making sure you're considerate when you're sharing these things. So that's what I would say is my own tip for marriage. Yeah.
The newlyweds. Wow. Thank you so much. As I'm sitting down, there's so many questions bubbling in my head, but no, it's really, really been great. And you guys have provided us with so much wisdom. I'm sitting here and I've enjoyed every single second. I've learned so much. So I hope you guys watching have learned a lot too. There will be another episode of this, so please stay tuned. Make sure you share, like, comment, subscribe, share with anyone that you think might need advice on this life, on this journey called marriage. But I want to say a special thank you once again to Auntie Dolapo and Auntie Adeola.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Loved having you here. Thanks, guys.
You.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Knowing, but not knowing, aching, the empty, the open, the hoping, almost but not quite, stuck at the intersection, praying for the back then. Save you from the right now. Save you from the